Good morning, everyone. I'm Toby Goldberg. I'm a Senior Community Investment Manager at the bank. I'm super excited to be leading the Jobs for New England program this year, and I'm really looking forward to speaking with all of you about some of the highlights. So these are some pretty good numbers. Over the last 7 years, our Jobs for New England program, or J&E, has helped to create or preserve over 13,700 jobs. Over 113 of our members have used the program, and with their assistance, we've leveraged just under $39 million in subsidy to create over $364 million in advances. These are, when you look down, the average advance is over $404,000. So these are good sized advances going to small businesses in your lending area. Next slide. Jobs for New England is designed to help you to support your small minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses in your lending areas. We do it by providing interest rate subsidies, using an internal interest rate subsidy to provide you, excuse me, with 0% loans that you can make to your borrowers. Some things to note about this year's program is we will be launching it. The first drop will be on March 5th, and the initial drop will be for $2.5 million in terms of interest rate subsidy. We're going to have 4 scheduled releases this year: March 5th, May 7th, July 9th, and September 10th. I've already put those dates on my calendar. If you're looking to participate in Jobs for New England, those drops will be made at 9 a.m. on those mornings. Members in the initial round will be capped with a subsidy of $100,000. This is very similar to what we did in 2024. It's sort of gradually increasing these caps enables more members, more of you to access more loans for your small businesses in your communities. So we'll be increasing that first cap to $150,000 with the May release, and then to $250,000 with the release in July at the end of the program year. Funding, as has been consistent through the last several rounds, will be allocated on a first come, first served basis. So as you start to queue up for the beginning of this round, you start thinking about the businesses who might be able to benefit and the loans that, in terms of the timing that you'll be doing to make this program work. We're adding a new feature this year, in that you will be able to add additional subsidy for approved awards, enabling you to sort of help mitigate interest rate shock to your borrowers. So how does Jobs for New England work? Well, J&E, if on a traditional commercial loan, your borrower's loan is based on your cost of funds plus your spread, results in the rate to your borrower, right? With Jobs for New England, you start out with a zero cost of funds because we loan you our standard classic advance at 0%. You add your spread, and the end result is a below market rate loan to your borrower. It's a real benefit that can help you, can give you a competitive advantage and allow you to target loans that you might not otherwise be able to make. How this program works is J&E is really 2 loans, right? You're borrowing a classic advance from us at 0%. The end of the day, you see a 0% loan in your Ideal Way account. The subsidy is an internal transaction. You won't see that. You'll see it when you do the calculations on the outside, but what you're going to see is that 0% advance based on the term that you requested in your Ideal Way account. And secondly, the end loan is you taking this 0% money, adding your spread, and giving your borrower a discounted rate. It's really just that simple. Our loan to you and your loan to the borrower. The benefits, wow, there's a lot. This is a really great program. Our members who've used it come back and tell us some really wonderful stories. They're able to make longer term advances than they would traditionally make, giving your borrower long-term fixed rate discounted loans for 1 to 10 years. You can combine those J&E, you can layer J&E with other funding sources to come up with a blended rate that's below what you would typically do on a market loan. And you get consideration for CRA credit. We've heard from you, and we believe that this program was really designed to give you a competitive advantage with eligible small business loans while maintaining your normal spread. It's a really simple program to use. So what are the steps? You identify a borrower and underwrite the deal like you would any other small business loan. Keep in mind that while this is J&E eligibility is based around the small SBA 504 program, it is a discounted loan product. It is not a guarantee program. You click and do the online application. It'll take you about 10 minutes. You make sure you have your community lending login. And for those of you who are new, please jump onto our website. We'll be giving you the link at the end of this webinar, or you can just click on FHLB, go to community lending login, and if you don't have an account, request one. So use that login, you fill out the application, and we send you an email when it's approved. Keep in mind that the approval is a reservation of subsidy and it's not a rate lock. Your application is subject to rate shock up until the point where the funds are dispersed. Step number 3 is you get ready to take the loan down. You know when the closing is. You either take it down before or after the closing. And then the follow-up is pretty simple. You send us the borrower's note demonstrating that you've passed on the benefit of J&E to your borrower. And Mike, I'm going to turn this back to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Toby. So as Toby noted, J&E is really it's a powerful tool, and it's something that our members have really grown to love quickly. The first time a member participates in the program, it's the hardest time. It takes you about 10 minutes to do your application. Once you do that first application, it probably drops to about 1.5 to 2 minutes to do an application, and you realize that this really is free money, and it is true. It's not too good to be true, but it is really it's a powerful tool. You can do 1 to 10 year terms for the classic advances. J&E does allow you to do blended rates. We can do stuff where you have a shorter J&E term and you give your borrower a longer term with a market rate reset somewhere within their note. Basically, we just need to confirm that the math works out, that everything ties together, that the full benefit of that interest rate subsidy is getting passed through to your borrower. But by no means do we require any sort of spread reduction on behalf of the members. So we want this to be, the ultimate win-win. And the question that we often get after that is, well, what's in it for you? It's part of the bank's goal to support community and economic development. And our board back in 2016 decided that realized that the link between small businesses and housing and communities was just too strong to ignore, and that's kind of how the J&E program came about. So as you're working through, trying to figure out how your loans can fit into this, just a few things to keep in mind. We do technically have a standard prepayment fee because it is a classic advance. At its core, that's what J&E is. It's a classic advance. And we do modify that a little bit, though, because we let you use the unamortized subsidy to cover any sort of prepayment. So the way that our prepayment fee is, it's really just a make whole that we hope to never actually charge a fee, even if you have to prepay your advance. We've never had a prepayment fee on a 0% J&E. So technically we do include it, but what we typically just advise members is throw some language into your note that just says the borrower, in the slim chance that there would be a fee, the borrower would be responsible for it. And again, also though, if your standard language has like a 5-year sliding scale for a prepayment, we're not going to interfere in your lending. If you typically would have that to protect your spread, that's fine with us. What we ask is that you don't add anything to your loan that would interfere with the J&E subsidy. We're intentionally fairly silent on what your spread is, because we know that each loan is different, different risk, different term, different businesses, and we will defer to your standard lending practices with the J&E application. You don't even need to submit your underwriting to us. It's really that simple. It's the name of the business, 3 sentences about what they're going to do with the money, and that gets us into who can participate really here. It's members that meet our standard capital, stock, and collateral requirements and eligible for long-term advances. CDFIs may participate with a depository member providing a pass-through. So we do have a new CDFI program that we launched the pilot last year, and we're going to come out with the full program this year, which is looking more at like the route for CDFIs to go to access discounted funding. But J&E can be used for CDFI typically on a project-by-project basis. If you do have a CDFI that you want to work with, give us a call and we can talk through the application process. One thing I do want to let everybody know about the member requirements on long-term advances, we do have a recently rolled out credit rating system that does potentially put long-term advances at risk for certain members. My recommendation is that you speak with your treasury side to know if you have any restrictions on long-term borrowing. You can also give us a call too. And typically what we will do is we're going to be checking that at the time of application. We'll give you a warning about what we see on our end. And at the time of disbursement, it will be checked again. And there is the chance that you'll need to get a waiver, or we might not be able to do the long-term advances. So if that's something that comes up, it's very few instances of that, but I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that there is going to be a little bit of extra scrutiny given to member participation, and that's just a bank-wide requirement that we have now. So borrowers, we're going to be looking at small businesses as defined by SBA, and they'll of course need to meet the loan eligibility requirements for both the member banks on your lending, because this is your loan, and also for the J&E program. The SBA small business definitions are pretty wide, and that's great for this program. We want to catch as many small businesses as we can into this program. So what do you need to do for your loan for it to be eligible? Well, we cast a wide net here. For your small business, they need to meet just one of these 7 criteria. They need to create 1 job for every $25,000 of program subsidy funds dispersed. So that's not the advance, that's just the subsidy. So if on this first funding release, we're going to be capping members at $100,000 of subsidy. That is on say you have a 5-year term, that's about $500,000 on an advance. But for that, the business would just need to state to you that they're creating 4 jobs to meet the job creation eligibility criteria. Another one is job retention. It does not have that same $25,000 calculation. If you can tell us that this transaction, that this loan is going to help save 1 job, then they meet the criteria. So we're placing a lot of weight into the job preservation. We love to see jobs created as well, but job preservation is is really a key component of J&E. So we don't have that $25,000 calculation there. Some of the lesser used criteria are under the economic development umbrella. So you want to improve, diversify, or stabilize the economy of a community, stimulate other business development, revitalize a business district or community that has a written plan. You could expand a small business owned and controlled by women, veterans, minorities, or disabled persons, or modernize and upgrade facilities. So with some of these categories, we're happy to talk through it with you. If it's not self-explanatory, something like stimulate other business development, the example I always give on this one is you have a borrower who wants to open up a banquet facility, but they don't have a kitchen to start off. So you can say, well, in the local economy, we're going to need, caterers. We're going to need chair providers, linens, that sort of thing. So you can kind of look at the overall benefit of the loan that you're making. I would say, by and large, most projects come in with either job creation or retention, but we're always excited to see some of these economic development criteria used as well. So what can J&E leverage? This is the big question that everybody has. So to start off the year, we're going to be looking at that $100,000 subsidy cap per member. As Toby noted, we will eventually get up to a $250,000 cumulative subsidy cap on the year. But for now, this is just to give you an idea on the buying power of J&E based on the rates yesterday. Again, J&E is subject to rate shock. So whatever those rates are doing, the advance numbers here may fluctuate a bit. But to just give you an idea, right now, $100,000 on a 5-year term, $100,000 subsidy on a 5-year term would buy you $510,000 on a 0% advance that you would pass through to a borrower. If you go with a shorter term, we're looking at $828,000. So that's some real, strong impact there for these 0% advances. You can put in multiple applications. You could put in one big application. It doesn't matter to us. We've had members that routinely just submit a lot of small ones for that $5,000 subsidy floor, which we do have in place. And that's really to kind of limit the work that goes into some of these applications. On the member side and our side, it takes between 9 and 12 people to actually process these advances, and we want to keep the value in the program for both the member and us, and so that's why that floor came into play several years ago, and that's been successful. But we do encourage our members to get creative with what you're doing. J&E, the hardest part of J&E is to reserve that subsidy. We can change your application around and customize it to however you and your business, your small business customer need that to look. So if say you put in for a $500,000 5-year advance, and you realize, what, this business really needs long-term stability, we can push that out to a 10-year advance if you want, and just provide a blended rate for that 10 years to give them a slightly, it'd be slightly higher on the rate, of course, going out for 10 years with a blended rate, but it still provides that long-term stability. Other businesses in that startup mode want to front-end load that full benefit of J&E, and we can do that. Say you do a 3-year advance for $800,000 or something like that, and then have it convert to a market rate after that once the business gets their feet under them. So how can this benefit your customer? Here it is in real numbers. When you're looking at a regular classic advance, as of yesterday, it was 4.49 on a 5-year. That cost of funds for J&E would be 0. Same spread that you would normally charge. So this is just an example of 2.75. It could be higher, it could be lower. But when you look at the end rate there, the customer is saving 4.5% on their rate for that 5-year term, and that will make you a friend for life. It's extremely powerful. It's a tool that has brought businesses coming back to us for additional advances. It's exciting when we see a repeat customer. We've had one, I think, come in for 6 different J&E advances as they've grown. And it's been amazing, and the impact on the local economy has been tremendous for them. So just a quick example here of how this would work. So in this case, we're going to be looking at a 5-year term. The advance that the member is requesting is $470,000 to pass through to their borrower for a 5-year term. Their spread in this case is 300 basis points. And what J&E is doing is it's buying down our lowest regular cost of funds, so the CDA Extra Classic rate. As of yesterday, it was 4.38. J&E, of course, then is a 0% advance. It's going to reserve just over $91,000 of interest rate subsidy. And so that's that present value of the interest rate reduction over the 5-year term. And the end rate to the borrower is 3%. So that is just one quick example of really what J&E can do. And again, as Toby mentioned, that $91,000 of subsidy never actually goes to the members. That stays with us, and it's just our internal calculation of how we put the subsidy to work for you. Just another quick example here on a 10-year, $225,000, 350 spread. The CDA Extra rate on this one would be 4.7. We're buying that down to 0, using $83,000 of subsidy, and the rate to the borrower instead of 8.36 is 3.5. So when you tell your customers that, good luck finding somebody else who can beat that rate, right? It's such a powerful tool, and it is really that easy to access. J&E is versatile. As Toby mentioned, we based the eligibility roughly on the SBA 504 program. We figured most lenders commercial lenders are going to be familiar with the 504, and J&E fits nicely then with our eligibility into taking out the member banks or credit unions 50% contribution on that 504. So it allows you to really get some powerful interest rate reductions into that loan. You can do blended rates, low introductory rates if you'd like, on an adjustable note. Freeze for the J&E part and then adjust later. And again, we can adjust this to fit whatever you and your borrower need. What we typically recommend is when you get that application in from your borrower, put in the application for J&E. The J&E application is just a reservation. Even when we approve it, the funds are reserved for you, but there's no commitment. So if your deal falls through, just send us an email and we'll drop the money back to the pool, clear it off of your subsidy cap, and you can put in for a new application for new borrowers if you have others. But the important part is to reserve that subsidy, and then you can have that kind of in your back pocket as you're negotiating with the borrower on what the rate is going to be and everything like that. So just some quick examples here. This was a project up in Vermont where the business started as a food cart and opened up their permanent location with help from J&E and the member. The startup business created 8 to 10 jobs for the local economy and potential payroll services business for the credit union. So it was, a gift that kept on giving, really. In this case, it was $144,000 advance using just about $19,000 of subsidy over a 5-year term, and those new jobs were created. Here's another one down in Connecticut, where it supported a women-owned business. This one was a $300,000 advance that used $43,000 of subsidy for the owner to purchase the farm that she'd been managing for years from the previous owner. And it's proven to be a success, and she's continuing to grow the business. And as you can note there too, she has grown her family as part of this too. And Brittany has been, really loves the J&E program, and was really happy to, of course, to get this advance. And then one more here up in New Hampshire. This was a small business owned by a woman that she was starting this business called AccuPet Vet up in Dover, New Hampshire, where she took just over $429,000 on the advance, using $70,000 in subsidy over a 10-year term. And this was really important for her to get the business started up. So as Toby mentioned, we do have this new feature this year. Previously, when you would put in an award, a request for funding, the J&E subsidy would be locked, and if you needed additional funding prior to disbursement, you would have to get approval from us, either by calling or emailing. What we're trying to do is streamline this and to make it so you can request funding on your own. We're not going to be manually increasing subsidy anymore. We wanted to keep this first come, first serve. Members can have full access to increasing those advances, or increasing not the advance, the subsidy at any point. So it's really going to be a simple process. After you have an approved project, you're going to see your project listed on your dashboard. If prior to calling into the funding desk, you'd like to increase the advance and update the subsidy for the rate, you just click on this update advance amount button. You'll see this on your dashboard when you log in. You can add additional principal requested. So sometimes when Janie gets submitted, say in this case, you really needed $200,000 for the loan, but there was only enough subsidy at the time of application to fund $150,000. Periodically, funds are added to the pool as projects drop off or we have a funding drop. So in this case, the member would say, you know what, we need to get $200,000. There's funding available in the pool. We're going to increase that principal request, update the current CDA classic rate, CDA extra classic rate, and you'll submit that, and we'll process it on a first come, first serve basis. It'll be processed just like we do with our application. So you click that submit button, and the funding will be temporarily reserved if it's available. It's really going to be that simple. If you know that the rate has increased from the time that you submitted your application and you'd like to just get more subsidy without changing the amount of the advance, you can also do that. Just put in 0 for the additional principal requested and update that CDA extra classic rate and submit. So that would reserve additional subsidy for you to make up the difference, hopefully. This was a 1-minute process. If you need to increase the term, however, that's going to be a separate process. You're just going to need to submit a new application for the project, and we will be able to combine your awards potentially. We're still kind of working that functionality out, but that's most likely what we'll be doing, unless there's a slight chance we might add a term change request here, but most likely for this year, plan to reach out to us if you need to increase the term. We can walk you through the process. But keep in mind that we will no longer be able to add subsidy at the time of disbursement. You must request this additional subsidy prior to calling the funding desk. Do this the day before you plan to take the funding down. That's really important because the way that our process works, it needs a day to cycle through our system and get approved and get to the funding desk overnight. So please, when you know you have a closing date and you know when you are going to be taking down the funding, please do call or check in on the rates, put in an updated rate request here to grab any extra subsidy, and we'll get that reservation for you and then have your funding team call into the desk the next day. That's going to be the best way to do it this year. In the past, we've had the funding desk has been able to increase subsidy at the time of disbursement. We're moving away from that. To be fair to everybody, you now need to request it in advance. And if you're short at the time of disbursement on that day, you can decrease your term, you can decrease the advance, but we won't be able to increase your subsidy without it being this prior approval process. So please just keep that in mind when you have your Treasury team call in advance. Do yourself a favor and check the rate beforehand. We do allow you to take down advances in advance and prior to closing with your borrower. Once you know that closing date, take down the advance. You have 30 days after you take the funds to actually provide us with that executed note as the follow-up report. So we strongly urge you to take down J&E due to that rate shock that could be present there. In the event that J&E cannot fund the full advance and you're forced to decrease it, we want you to be able to still provide a blended rate. So that way, if J&E can't fund the full loan amount that you planned, you can provide some market rate funding to make up the full amount and adjust the rate to your borrower accordingly. That way you're not eating into your own spread. We never want J&E to cost you money. So we do let you take down J&E. Typically most folks take it a week or two in advance. That way you know exactly what you're looking at. Hopefully J&E can fully cover the advance amount that you need. But again, if you don't, we can work out what a blended rate would be, or you can change the term. And as I mentioned, the compliance reporting is really, it takes 30 seconds. You're just going to be uploading the executed note with your borrower and checking off a few boxes to confirm how the funds were used. And it's really that simple. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Toby, and I'll take a look at any questions on here right before we wrap up.
Mike, thanks so much. So wow, that was a lot of information. Feel free to ask us our questions. Below is just the excuse me, just some summaries that of the information that Mike provided. We are opening the portal February 11th today. So that's exciting. And J&E will be available as funding allows through December 19th. We know that some of these deals are unicorns, so feel free, as Mike said, to reach out to one of us to discuss them, ask questions. We're excited to work with you, and we want the process to be super transparent, but sometimes there is something unique that you want to fly by us, and that's not an infrequent occurrence. So I'm happy to talk to you about your job or about your loans and customers and seeing if they are in fact J&E eligible. As I mentioned earlier, our first funding drop will be on March 5th at 9 a.m. And those are the dates of the subsequent drops. Keeping in mind that the member cap will be increased over the first three funding drops, first 100, 150, and 250. As Mike mentioned, you have 90 days to draw the funds. If something gets delayed, reach out to us. We do need all of the 2025 subsidy dispersed by April 3rd next year. Oh my gosh, that seems so far from today, but I'm sure it'll be here before we all know it. And as we mentioned before, what we're reserving for you when you apply is the interest rate. Or is the subsidy rather, not the interest rate. The subsidy is what you're requesting and for your loan. If rates change, we may have to adjust the term depending on what the environment is and if there's additional subsidy. We're hoping that this new tool that we're launching will give you a little bit more flexibility and provide you with the opportunity to grab additional subsidy if your loan amount goes up or if the rates change, just to make that an easier process. And then once you've called to disperse the loans, you have 30 days in which to give us the note. Keep in mind, we'll be following up if we don't get it. There are always reminders. But we do need to see that the benefit of the discounted rate is passed on to your borrowers.
So one thing, as Toby mentioned, the April 3rd, 2026 date. For those of you that are familiar with J&E, you know that up until now we've always said J&E must be dispersed by year end, and we would have a bit of a panic in December as projects were slow to move through the system and go forward with members. This is a change for us this year to give you the full 90 days from the time of approval to take down the funds and put them into your project. So if you have a project that is submitted on December 19th, we can still give you the 90 days or up to the 90 days, or April 3rd, whichever sooner. I think that might be cutting it short by a few days there. But this is a new accounting change for us that we are now allowed to have funds that are committed in the program year disperse the following year. But what we'll be doing in that case is we're going to check in with you as the year comes to an end. We always allow extensions for projects that may take a little bit longer to get to the closing table. Just send Toby an email saying that this deal's still alive. We're just struggling along with it, and we can put in an extension for you. And towards the end of the year, what we're going to be doing is kind of pushing members to make a commitment, not formally committing, but really looking at your deals. So anything that's still kicking around in November, December, we ask that you give it a hard look and decide if you really think this is going to go through by April 3rd. Otherwise, we can release the funding and somebody else might be able to use it by the end of the program year. So that's just one of the other changes that we have this year is we won't be faced with that New Year's Eve deadline that we've had in the past. And there's one question so far. The slides, yes, we're going to have this presentation is recorded, so we'll have this available on our YouTube channel. But we can also send around the slides to anybody that's interested. Just shoot either Toby or myself an email, and we can send them out to you.
And there is the login for those of you who might need your own community lending login. We're happy to give you more than one account per member. We like you to have your own. So there is the link to request one. If you have an account and you've forgotten your username or password, shoot me an email. I'm happy to help you with your username, and then you can reset your password to something you'll remember, hopefully. And more information, it can be found on our Jobs for New England page, as well as the login to apply for J&E once the round opens, once the drop occurs in March 5th.
So Toby brings up a good point about multiple logins too. We need each user to have their own login, but we often find that some members that have multiple users for J&E, you're going to want to prioritize your loans internally before you submit your applications. At least that's the way that most folks do it. So that way your lenders are not stepping on each other's toes trying to submit applications for the subsidy cap space that you have available. It's great to strategize ahead of time and prioritize the order that you want to submit the applications because it is first come, first serve. So just keep that in mind as you're putting together your deals. And as Toby mentioned, the application portal is open right now. You can start drafting applications. J&E does not maintain a waiting list. So you can only submit when there is sufficient subsidy available to fully fund what your request is. So, as you're working through your applications now, you'll have potentially up to $100,000 of subsidy available. But just know that you're going to get an error message as you click through at the very end saying you've requested more than is available, and that is completely normal because there is no money in the pool until March 5th when you can submit. So there's a question on here: what if your client pays off the loan ahead of maturity? That's totally fine. So like I said, J&E does include a prepayment fee. It's really just the make whole for us. There should never be a fee for a 0% advance, and I say should, I can't guarantee it because our attorney would strangle me for that. But if you have any questions about that before you actually quote a payoff to your borrower, check with our funding desk. They can run the prepay calculation and just give you that reassurance that there would not be a fee. That's usually the safest way to go. So it shouldn't be an issue to pay it off ahead of time. If the loan that you make and utilize the J&E funds for is paid off, you must prepay J&E. You can't hold on to the J&E funds. You can't put them into a different loan or anything like that. We need you to pay off that matching loan. They do go hand in hand. You could use the program for the first 5 years of the note only. For example, if you're doing a mortgage, can you use it just for the first 5 years and then have the rate go conventional thereafter? Yes. So J&E, when you take the funds down from us, you're looking at a term anywhere from 1 to 10 years. We can do fractions of years in there too. At the time of application, I think you could only put in whole years, but we can switch it to a fraction. And then for whatever that J&E term is, you just need to show that the full benefit of the J&E subsidy is being passed through with a rate lock to match up with the J&E term. Meaning you can't take J&E for 10 years and have a rate adjusted at 5 years. You can take J&E for 5 years and have a rate adjusted at 10 years if you'd like. But typically it's, you take J&E for 5, you have the rate adjusted 5, that sort of thing. But we just need the term of the J&E advance that you take from us has to be, that's the minimum term that your borrower gets a rate lock. But we have had stuff where a business was buying a building. We do allow businesses to buy buildings for the benefit of their business. And what we often see is like a 25-year term with a 5-year rate lock. And that's where the J&E comes in at the beginning. And then it gets reset every 5 years. And just on the building, J&E is used for fixed assets. We don't allow working capital, lines of credit, real estate speculation, or inventory. But if the business is buying a building for the primary benefit of that business, that's fine with us. We're also silent on how much of the building the business is using. We get a lot of applications from dental practices for one reason or another, where they're going to be using 30% of an office building and they're going to lease out the rest. That's totally fine. Or a brewery is going to use 60% of a warehouse and lease out the rest, or 20% of the warehouse and lease out the rest. They're buying the building for the stability of their business. And as long as you can tell us that, that's fine. We just need to know that this is not real estate investment funding. So there is a line in the sand where we will cut off the eligibility. So if you ever have a question about that, definitely check with us ahead of time, and we can run through the project with you. But overall, J&E is looking for those fixed assets, construction, equipment, build out of space, buying a business, buying a building for the business, that sort of thing. Can I apply for J&E on a loan that's closed a few months ago and is already on our books? So J&E does not have a formal definition of how far back you can go. In a case like that, what we do is J&E does allow for refis. So if the borrower that you have has been on this loan for a while and they're just looking for a better rate and they want to do a little bit of extra work on the project, we do have the ability for them to put in as for a refi. They do need to do additional work on top of just the refi. So we don't allow a straight refi in most cases. However, if it is just a recent project that has just closed and you can tell us that, listen, this business, they closed this loan a few months ago. They're going to be struggling to make these payments. They need a better rate. Ultimately, if they get this better rate, they're going to be able to preserve more jobs, or they're going to be able to create more jobs. You can then you can submit for that within a few months and give us that explanation. And then what you'll have to do, though, is provide a modification to the note to show that the entire benefit of that J&E subsidy is being passed through to the borrower. So what you cannot do is close with your borrower and then request J&E and not reduce their rate. That we would not allow. But if you have something where, say it's closing now and you want to apply for J&E in 2 weeks, just be ready to do that note modification. But on cases like this, let's talk through it. We do have certain situations where it's the J&E is part of a permanent loan that's taking out some bridge funding or family funding, as the case is often with these small businesses. And for that type of thing, we would say that it's taking out some temporary funding that's not a true refi, and we would look at J&E as a fresh project versus a loan that they've had on the books for 4 years, and they just they need to if it's a restaurant, they need to do some work on their kitchen and they need to get a better rate. That sort of thing would be totally fine for our refi process. Often too, we do get this question a lot about businesses that when they're buying, they say they're going to buy the business and the building. Doing 2 notes is totally fine. Depending on how you want to structure the setup, it can either be 1 or 2 applications. I typically would recommend that you do separate applications. So each of your notes can kind of sit alone. So, keep that in mind as we go through. All right. Any other questions? I think I got everything on here.
Let's see anything else.
All right. Well, we've got all of our contact information up here. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. And with that, we'll let everybody go. And just keep in mind, if you want to take a look at the slides or have any questions, just let us know, and we can send them out to you. And hopefully, in the next week or so, we'll have this presentation also up on our YouTube channel. So good luck, everybody, with your applications, and we'll be in touch.
Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining us.